Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. In 2020, I was transferred from sunny San Diego to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I'd been in the Marines for over 4 years and was finally assigned to a unit set to deploy to Syria. For those who don't know, before deploying overseas, there's a mountain of classes and training to complete, starting about 6 months before the deployment date. I became close friends with Mike, my senior-most corporal. I was the only sergeant in my platoon. We hung out all the time outside of work, barbecuing, hitting the gym, having parties with our families, the works. When the time came, we were sent to the land of never-ending sand. About 4 months in, I started getting a weird feeling that something wasn't right. My wife was rarely available to talk on the phone or Facebook Messenger. Now I have a special skill I honed from sneaking past my Gulf War veteran father, who was strict about bedtime, meaning bedtime, not raid the fridge for snacks time. I can move silently, and you won't hear me coming unless I want you to. One day, I entered our PEB, just a big container housing about 8 people, and saw my wife's face on Mike's video chat. He didn't hear me until I shut the door. "Oh, hey man," Mike said, quickly ending the call. "Just, helping your wife with some house stuff." I played it cool. "No problem. Thanks for looking out." For the rest of the deployment, I kept noticing similar incidents. I'd catch glimpses of them talking or hear snippets of conversation. I started taking mental notes, planning my revenge. Before things really got to me mentally, our time in Syria was ending and we flew home. The homecoming was uneventful, except for my 3-year-old not recognizing me for a few minutes. Then it was all smiles and hugs. Just like before deploying, we had a mountain of post-deployment classes, TBI, traumatic brain injury screenings, mental health awareness, certifications, you name it. Nobody was exempt from the endless PowerPoint presentations scheduled that week. Out of nowhere, Mike started having random appointments almost every day, or something would come up where he'd have to leave while the rest of us were stuck all day in class or at medical getting screened. "Sorry guys," he'd say, slipping out. "Gotta take care of some family stuff." You ever have that gut feeling that something's definitely going on, but your brain's like, no, stop being paranoid? Well, that's what I was dealing with daily. I started following Mike a few days a week when he'd leave work early or make a call. Sure enough, his car would be right outside my house every single time. When I finally confronted him, Mike denied everything. "Come on, man," he said, looking offended. "You know I'd never do that to you. We're brothers." He made me feel like I was going crazy, but I quietly compiled evidence and brought it all to the battalion sergeant major, who's the top of the food chain under the battalion commander. After about a week, I got called into the battalion commander's office to discuss his findings. "What do you want to happen, Sergeant?" he asked. My answer was simple. "I want his rank, sir." Justice came swift and painful. Mike was hit with loss of rank, forfeiture of half a month's pay for 2 months, restriction, and extra duties. He'd been promoted to sergeant shortly after we returned stateside, and in less than a month his rank was gone. I heard from mutual friends that he left his wife to be with his new girlfriend, who was also pregnant with his 3rd son. In case you're wondering, I tried to stay with my wife for my son's sake, but that turned out to be a huge mistake. A few months after the dust settled, I was transferred back to San Diego for a naval deployment. My wife and I were giving it one last shot. I went underway for 2 weeks, and guess where she flew to? Mike's house for their last bit of time together. After discovering all this, I lost any interest in making it work. I deployed on the ship and actually met my new wife there. We've been together ever since. And I've been much happier than when I was being mentally tortured by my ex. Moral of the story: don't screw your best friend's wife. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be writing one of these stories, but here I am. I own a decent-sized ranch in rural Texas that's been in my family for generations. We've got about 200 acres, mostly used for cattle grazing, but there's this special spot on the property that's always been my favorite. On the far end of the ranch, there's a small grove of cedar trees. Not just any cedars, mind you. These are rare Atlas cedars brought over from Morocco by my great-grandfather back in the 1920s. He was quite the world traveler and plant enthusiast. Over the years, those trees grew into a stunning little forest, with 12 massive specimens that were the pride of our family. Now, I'm not much of a tree hugger, but even I could appreciate how special these cedars were. They were huge, probably 80 feet tall, with wide-spreading branches that created this magical canopy. The wood alone was incredibly valuable, but we'd never dream of cutting them down. They were like living family heirlooms. Enter my neighbor, let's call him Bob. Bob moved in about 5 years ago, buying the property adjacent to mine. At first, we got along fine. We'd wave when we saw each other, chat about the weather, typical neighbor stuff, but things started to change when Bob decided he wanted to expand his house. One day, I'm out checking fences when I hear this god-awful racket coming from the direction of the cedar grove. I hop on my ATV and race over there, and what do I see? Bob, with a crew of workers, chainsaws blazing, cutting down my cedar trees. I was seeing red. I jumped off my ATV and started yelling, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Bob, cool as a cucumber, says, "Oh, hey there, just clearing some trees to improve my view. Hope you don't mind." Don't mind? These are my trees on my property. You're trespassing and destroying my property? Bob had the audacity to laugh. Come on, they're just some old trees, no big deal. Besides, they were blocking my view of the sunset. I was speechless. By the time I gathered my wits, they'd already taken down 3 of the cedars. I called the sheriff immediately, and thankfully they arrived pretty quickly. They put a stop to the destruction, but the damage was already done. 3 of my prized cedars were on the ground, and another 9 had been partially cut or damaged beyond saving. The sheriff took statements and photos, and I immediately called my lawyer. I knew this was going to be a legal battle, and I was prepared to fight it all the way. Over the next few weeks, I had several experts come out to assess the damage. An arborist confirmed that all 12 trees were effectively destroyed. The 9 that weren't completely cut down had been so severely damaged that they wouldn't survive. A specialist in rare trees estimated the value of the cedars, taking into account their age, rarity, and size. The number he came back with was staggering, $500,000. That's right, $500,000 worth of trees gone in an afternoon. My lawyer filed a lawsuit against Bob for trespassing, property destruction, and the value of the trees. In Texas, we have laws that allow for up to triple damages in cases of intentional tree destruction. We were going for the full amount, $1.5 million. Bob, of course, tried to weasel his way out of it. First, he claimed it was an honest mistake, that he thought the trees were on his property. But we had clear property markers and fences, and the survey proved the trees were well within my land. Then he tried to lowball the value of the trees, saying they were just common cedars worth a few $100 each. But our expert testimony shot that down quick. The case dragged on for months. Bob kept trying to settle for less, but I was out for justice. This wasn't just about the money, though that was certainly a factor. It was about principle. You can't just go around destroying other people's property because it inconveniences you. Finally, after almost a year of legal back and forth, we got our day in court. The trial lasted 3 days, and let me tell you, it was tense. My lawyer presented a rock-solid case, with expert testimony, photos, and even some historical documents about the trees from my great-grandfather's time. Bob's lawyer tried to paint me as some tree-obsessed lunatic who was overreacting to a simple mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the jury came back after deliberation, I was on pins and needles. The verdict? In my favor on all counts. The jury awarded me the full $1.5 million in damages, plus legal fees. I nearly fell out of my chair when I heard the number. Bob looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His face went white, then red, then purple. He started sputtering about appeals and injustice, but the judge shut him down pretty quick. In the end, Bob had to sell his property to pay the judgment. Last I heard, he moved to Arizona. Good riddance, I say. As for me, I used part of the money to start a reforestation project on the ranch. We're planting a new grove of Atlas cedars along with some other rare species. It'll take decades for them to reach the size of the ones we lost. But I like to think my great-grandfather would approve. The rest of the money went into a trust for my kids' college funds and to make some improvements around the ranch. Every time I ride out to check on the new trees, I think about how close we came to losing this family legacy forever. So let this be a lesson to all you would-be tree cutters out there. Make damn sure you know whose property you're on before you fire up that chainsaw. You might just find yourself on the wrong end of a $1 million lawsuit. The next one is a petty revenge story. Earlier today, someone knocked on my door claiming to be from a company that audits natural gas suppliers. She asked to see my gas bill to see if the current rate approved by the state is correct and to sign me up for a 5% rebate. She almost had me because she had a very official-looking ID. When I saw that the online form she wanted me to sign said it was a contract, I asked her to send it in the mail. She agreed and left. I immediately Googled the company, rhymes with Schmeesidence Denergy, and the first thing that came up was a Better Business Bureau report that this is a scam and the company is locking people into much higher energy rates. So I left my house to find the scammer, and she was at a neighbor's house down the street. The wife was just about to sign the contract when I called across the yard. "Don't sign that. I'm your neighbor and this is a scam." The husband came to the door and kicked the lady off of his property. I followed this woman and another one who was at the house next door and called the police. I was about 30 feet behind. While I was giving a detailed description of the two women, they were on the phone with someone. A minute later, a white van came driving up and the driver yelled at the women, "Hurry up and get in! You walk too fucking show!" The women ran and hopped in the van. The van then drove off backwards down the street, so I couldn't get the license number. The whole time I was relaying all of this to the police dispatcher who sent a car to the neighborhood. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A few years ago now, I worked as a nurse in Wales. There was a junior sister there who was an odd woman. She would openly bully a couple of staff members by telling them to do a faster handover by entering the room several times during said handover to tell them to be quicker until she was told that they would be a lot quicker if they hadn't been made to stop several times during their report. I didn't drive at the time, so had to take the bus. One early shift, the bus was a bit late, which made me 5 minutes late to the start of the shift. I was told by junior sister that I would need to take the 5 minutes off my 20-minute coffee break or work an additional 5 minutes at the end of my shift. When I started to voice my annoyance at being punished for something out of my control, I was told your working hours are from 7:30 a.m. to 3:00 p.m. with one 20-minute break. I chose to deduct the 5 minutes from my already short break, as leaving 5 minutes late would leave me late for my bus home. A few shifts later, I was getting on with my work and had a few care plans to rewrite. At the time, all notes were handwritten, as I had been a bit frosty with junior sister, just keeping any conversations strictly professional. I sat down to start rewriting said care plans. Junior sister asked if I wanted a hand, to which I replied, "If you would like to, thank you." To which she picked a bunch up and went into her office. Cue malicious compliance. Bang on 3 p.m. I packed up my things, grabbed my coat, and made a point of saying goodbye to junior sister. She looked up from her desk and asked me where I was going to, which I responded home. She said she was still writing my care plans and would I write a couple so she can get them done quicker. Yes, you guessed it. I replied with, "My working hours are from 7:30 till 3. I get no leeway when my bus is late, so I will no longer be staying after my shift has finished. I will just hand over any outstanding jobs to the next shift." To which I walked off. I would like to say the look on her face was priceless, but I had already left the ward and didn't see it, so worth losing 5 minutes to not be able to finish my food on my break. The next one is an entitled people story. Now, before I get into this, I want to give some context. I'm a 31-year-old guy working full-time at my local mall. Usually I just stick around the food court cleaning tables and the like, but I will go and do some other tasks such as cleaning the lids of the mall trash cans, cleaning the vendor areas, and the like. One thing we here at the mall have are people who just walk around the mall getting some cardio in, or as we call them, mal-walkers. Now, they do usually buy some things or get some lunch in the food court, but other than that, they're harmless, just minding their own business and going about their day. Well, a couple weeks ago on Saturday, which is our busiest day of the week, I was cleaning the carpets when I saw some malwalkers waiting at one of the entrances next to a clothing department store that I will leave nameless as it will give away where I work. I tried telling them that they'd have to wait for security, but one of them pleaded with me to call security and let them in. We usually open the doors at 9 a.m., even though the mall opens at 10 a.m., so me being the people pleaser I am, which I am slowly but surely working on, I gave in and called security. My boss, while he wasn't raging about it, still wasn't pleased and told me I can't do that no more, especially on Saturdays as we'd only have one security guard on call. He said that the only thing I could do is ignore them, but if I wanted to tell them that they'd have to wait for security, then don't call them if they beg me to. So, a couple days ago, I was doing my rounds and saw them malwalkers waiting outside the entrance to the food court this time. I told them when the mall opens and that they'd have to wait. Some of them asked me to call security, but I told them I couldn't do that anymore. Some were miffed, but they accepted it. Except for one lady. She practically banged on the door and demanded I call security and let them in at that very instant. One of the mall walkers told her to stop, but she was having none of it. I remember her saying, word for word, "I didn't come all this damn way to the mall just to get turned the duck away. I don't care what time you open, I want in and I want in now." Again, I told her she has to wait until 10 a.m. and she started going off on me, telling me that I'm a terrible employee. I will admit, I rolled my eyes and just walked away. This made her rage and she actually started punching the door and screaming at me to come back, which, nope. I did contact security to warn them about her and they said they'd keep an eye out. Well, not even 5 minutes later, I hear a commotion in the vendor area for the food court, which was in between a sushi bar and a bakery. I contacted security again to tell them about it, and they said they were already en route. Turns out Karen McMalwalker had snuck into the vendor area leading to both the food court and a jewelry kiosk, and one of the mall employees told her she couldn't be in there. This again made Karen rage, and she, from what the security guard told me, got in the employee's face and it got physical. One thing to note is that Karen is a white woman who had to have been in her 40s and was throwing down with a mixed-race woman who had to be in her late 20s to early 30s, specifying races for contextual reasons. Karen was told she could either just leave the mall and take a permanent ban, or she'd be arrested for B&E, breaking and entering, and assault. I should note I was a witness to this convo between Karen and the guard. Karen told this guard, again, word for word, "Or as a third option, you can go duck yourself and let me walk the mall, you ugly," insert racial slur here. This made the guard just up and call cop, and they came once the doors had opened. Karen was taken to jail for B&E, assault, and resisting arrest. Seriously, what is with these Karens and resisting arrest? A mysterious mystery that probably won't be solved. This may seem fake to some of you, and trust me, I wish it was. However, with how crazy this world is right now, who the hell knows anymore, right? The next one is an entitled parent story. I've been on this sub a long time, and I figured it was about time I finally added my own story. I'll try to make this quick and avoid oversharing, but basically, when I was 17, I went into cardiac arrest driving home from school. Miraculously, my car just drifted off the road and grazed a tree, leaving my then limp dead body mostly free from harm. I was told that had I still been conscious, or alive really, I may have ended up being injured far worse. Anyways, the person behind me stopped their car and called an ambulance, which in another incredible stroke of luck happened to be parked on the street I crashed on. There was a sheriff on scene who I got to talk to after this all went down and I was up and moving around again. He told me that because of my long hair, I'm a guy, the ambulance assumed it was a drug overdose and Narcaned me twice. After that didn't work, they finally used the defibrillators and brought me back on their second try. First time they brought me back, they lost me. This part of the story is getting too long, but basically I had an SICD put in, and to this day I haven't had any problems with my heart. Soon after my accident, my dad contacted Make-A-Wish, and they were happy to grant me a wish. As a 17-year-old who was freshly out of a car, that was my first idea for a wish, and I don't remember the exact reasoning, but they asked me to pick something else. My next idea was to travel, but seeing as how when this happened we were fresh out of the pandemic, Make-A-Wish had a huge back catalog of travel wishes, and they weren't doing international travel at the time. Eventually, I came to the idea of going to meet a girl I had been talking to on the internet, and from the point I decided to go see her, our relationship became a lot more serious. Some of the adults in my life were suspicious, and people loved to poke fun at my online, long-distance relationship, but in this day and age, with Snapchat and FaceTime, it's pretty easy to confirm that someone is who they say they are. Anyways, I talked about it with my wish granters, though I just referred to my now GF as a friend because I was a nervous teenager and they loved the idea of me using my wish to not meet someone famous, but to meet a friend. We didn't officially start dating until we met, but I'll refer to her as my GF, since there was such a long list of kids who wished for travel, and since I was pretty much as healthy as you can get being a Make-A-Wish kid, I ended up having to wait several months before I got to go. The lead-up was agonizing, and my GF and I were so excited to meet. This is where my dad started with his bullcrappery. Make-A-Wish had offered to set up some things for us to do together while I was visiting. For context, she lives in California, which is a long way away from my home state of Maine, and has a lot more interesting stuff to do, and my dad thought this was a great idea. Me, on the other hand, all I wanted was to meet my GF and spend as much time as I could with her. I didn't need to go to Disney or Universal, and neither did she. We were just looking forward to each other. My dad and my stepmom were both going to be coming along for the trip, and they decided that it would be better if we planned as much stuff to do as possible even if we didn't end up doing it, mostly so that they, my parents, would have something to do while I was with my GF. The way I saw it, they were trying to squeeze every penny they could out of Make-A-Wish. This to me felt wrong. I know that lots of Make-A-Wish kids survive, but I knew that I was a mostly healthy individual who didn't necessarily need this opportunity as other kids might, so I just wanted to go see my GF and not spend any of Make-A-Wish's money that I didn't have to. My dad was furious when I told him this. I can't remember the full conversation, lots of yelling, I have memory problems from the whole dying thing, and also my mind probably blocked it out because I hate yelling. And, long story short, he threatened to cancel my Make-A-Wish trip if I didn't plan the trip around making sure that my dad was entertained the whole time. He and my stepmom were staying in a nice hotel the whole trip. I was supposed to, I think, but I ended up staying at my GFS house. And I'm pretty sure they had some pocket money from Make-A-Wish to do some stuff while they were there, but that wasn't enough for him. In the end, not wanting to lose out on this opportunity, I let my dad have control of the trip and he had me tell them a bunch of stuff I wanted to do while I was there. There was a whole itinerary of different activities for them, and even then, after Make-A-Wish said that Disney was not available as an option currently, they ended up going to Disney with the money out of their own pockets. More evidence that they didn't need Make-A-Wish's money. My stepmom ended up not feeling well while we were there and didn't want to go anywhere. So my dad, after continuously telling him that we did not want to go do any of the things he planned, shows up to my GF's house unannounced early in the morning to try to get us to go with him to SeaWorld. We did not go. We know how they treat those animals. And he told us he had a good time with the dolphins. A few months after my trip, I graduated high school, quit my job, and moved across the country to be with my GF, and I haven't talked to my dad since I left. If you think I'm overreacting, he had a long history of verbal and psychological abuse as well as neglect for all his children, not just me. I was the third and final kid of his to grow up and decide I don't need him in my life anymore. I did not do a very good job at making this quick, but thank you for reading all the way here if you did. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.